These tranquil waters are a sanctuary from the cut and thrust of corporate life.
I love, going out in my little boat. When you're in a bad place, you dwell on those bad things that got you there. So going out on the water takes that away a bit.
Tony Watson's career as a tax lawyer fell apart when he accused a construction giant of incorrectly claiming hundreds of millions of dollars in tax deductions.
I told them that they were stealing from our children. They were stealing from taxpayers.
It cost him his job as a senior partner at a top-tier law firm.
I didn't seem capable of being shut up voluntarily, so they had to do it for me.
Now he wants to expose the roles of auditing giant KPMG and consultancy group PwC in the scheme. Do you think KPMG should have picked something up?
Absolutely, absolutely.
We know how influential the big four accounting firms are in the public sector.
I really do see these consultants as an infestation. They are going from senior levels in consultant firms and then into, senior executive positions in government.
They made at least $10 billion in government contracts over the past decade.
The big four are enormously powerful. Their tentacles spread across the whole of big business, globally and locally, and that power is unchecked, untransparent, invisible.
The operations of these giants in the private sector have received little public scrutiny. They're making huge profits from auditing the same companies they're consulting. It's risky business.
When they tell the truth, proper decision-making can be undertaken about where to make investments. When they fudge the truth, when they don't take their job seriously, we all stand to lose really significantly. The impact on our retirement of poor decision-making is very, very real.
A staggering 97% of the audit work of the country's biggest 300 listed companies are done by the Big Four. Between consulting and auditing, they earned more than $4 billion in 4 years. But not all private sector work is disclosed, meaning it could be billions of dollars more.
Crushing is the term a lot of whistleblowers use, and I think that is a very good term. It is a weight upon you, you feel the albatross on you, and it's hard to get up.
Tony Watson worked for Greenwoods and Herbert Smith Freehills since it began in 1985. Within 4 years, he rose to partner, managing its biggest client, Lendlease.
I worked for Lendlease and the board on nearly every major tax transaction they did for 30 years. So if the board did acquisitions, capital returns, dispositions, any tax litigation, I was involved.
In 2013, he became concerned Lendlease was double-dipping on tax claims over a $1.7 billion purchase of retirement villages.
I found that Lendlease were harvesting the tax deductions and brazenly booking the second deduction to profit. So for every $100, they would book $30 to profit. And it was really just stealing from the Australian taxpayer.
The scheme boosted the developers' profits. How much do you think Lendlease made from this tax scheme?
I estimate over $250 million and possibly upwards of $300 million. So that's based on $1 billion of deductions.
Watson raised his concerns, but they were ignored. Instead, he says Lendlease called on PwC for advice on the scheme.
When Lendlease knew I wouldn't support it, they went to Pricewaterhouse for all the subsequent acquisitions. That's when they became involved.
Its external auditor KPMG approved the accounts. It's the job of auditors to inspect accounts and ensure they're fair and honest.
Well, they either agreed to it or missed it. Now, if I'm an auditor and I can see that Lendlease has booked $260 million of other income in 3 years, I'd want to know what that was.
Watson got dumped from the Lendlease account.
I lost that account because I wouldn't get on board with them. I would not look away. And so I had to be removed.
While he was on unpaid sick leave, his company sacked him.
I just got a letter from them saying we've decided to terminate you.
How did you react when you got that letter?
Yeah, well, tears were rolling down the face.
But he refused to give up. Watson noted his concerns with company officials and a global tax partner at PwC. He also outlined his concerns in emails. In one email, he says Lendlease is taking an aggressive and wrong view in its tax deductions. In a second, he describes the scheme as an accounting mischief. And in a third, he says, the ATO will not fall for it. So then what did you do?
I told the tax office.
In August 2021, almost a decade after Watson first raised his concerns, Lendlease finally told its thousands of investors the tax office was auditing its retirement village tax scheme. Lendlease told 7:30 it's confident its tax treatment is consistent with the law and is waiting for the outcome of the ATO's audit.
The frustration for any whistleblower is, has the message been heard?
For Watson, another frustration is the role of Lendlease's auditor, KPMG. The firm has been auditing the developer for 65 years, sharing the same office building and paying rent into a trust that is partly owned by Lendlease.
I think anyone who's in that role for so long obtains a comfort factor that probably isn't appropriate in an audit.
I think at the end of the day, companies like Lendlease should be rotating their auditors.
What's the appropriate time for an auditor to rotate out of a company?
That's always been an issue that's been debated.
What about 10 years?
10 years could work. I think that's really something that the regulators need to actually look at.
20 years?
20 years probably too long. Yeah.
How about 60 years?
Way too long.
When asked about its time as Lendlease's auditor, KPMG said its focus is on delivering high-quality audits and a deep understanding of the business is critical to achieving that. It added that KPMG has policies and processes to manage potential conflicts. Last year, the corporate watchdog audited the auditors and found deficiencies in a third of the biggest firms. The review found failures in 50% of Deloitte's auditing cases and 48% of KPMG's. Is that good enough?
No, it's not good enough.
How would you describe it?
I think it's almost like a market failure.
The reports found the increase in deficiencies at KPMG and Deloitte concerning and warranted continued, deliberate and concerted action. Yet ASIC decided this year to abandon its annual reporting on auditing and dumped its chief accountant 2 weeks ago.
It's inexplicable to me. I have grave concern. If nobody is watching, that's the perfect conditions in which further degrading of the quality of audit is likely to occur.
ASIC told 7:30 it will now combine its annual audit reviews with surveillance of financial reporting, and that targeted reviews of the largest firms will happen from time to time. There are at least 10 legal actions underway, all alleging substandard auditing and advisory work across the Big Four firms. One case from December last year saw engineering group Downer EDI overstate its profit by up to $40 million over 4 years.
The impact is the share price went down. Investors lost money. Superannuation funds lost money. Mum and dad investors lost money.
The company's external auditor, KPMG, missed the errors when it approved the accounts as fair and true, charging $16 million for its audit work and another $1.8 million in consulting work.
KPMG, being the auditor, had signed off on it and said everything's fine, and everything wasn't fine. And really, at the end of the day, if something that serious got missed, they really need to have a look at their own systems and processes and understand what went wrong with that audit.
Less than 4 months after the debacle, Downer replaced its chief financial officer with a former KPMG partner. Monaco, an exclusive enclave in the French Riviera, is a playground for the rich and powerful, a haven for tax avoidance. Australia's Big Four consulting firms also have a base here.
They're in Monaco because it is the tax avoidance centre of the world. It is also an epicentre for money laundering. I'm not surprised they're here because many of their clients operate through here.
Professor Alan Fels is a former head of Australia's competition regulator and a global expert on economics and accounting.
There's a lack of competition. All big business is audited here and overseas by the Big Four, and no one else can get in.
His trip to Monaco is giving him a better understanding of the concentration of the Big Four.
Once they just did audit, and the aim was to report accurately, and that was it. Now they are involved in multiple other activities, consulting, advice, and so on, which compromise their relationship with the firm being audited.
Professor Fels is worried that poor quality auditing work is not only bad for business, but it could also wreak havoc on our strained economy.
We know that the global financial crisis of 2008 was partly triggered by bad auditing. And I have deep fears that something similar could occur to topple the global and the Australian economy in the coming period.
To stamp out conflicts, he wants auditors to no longer be able to consult in the same firm.
There needs to be a breakup of the big audit firms. Nothing less than a breakup will do. Self-regulation won't work, nor government regulation. Go for a clean break.
The conflict between auditing and consulting is being noticed by those at the very top. A federal inquiry has been reopened to scrutinise the structure and oversight of the sector. Senator O'Neill.
Hello, Adele. How are you?
Labor Senator Deborah O'Neill will chair the inquiry. She spent years holding the Big Four to account.
Some of the biggest businesses in the country are starting to have those suspicions on the back of what they've observed revealed here in the Senate. We've got a problem that cannot be ignored.
A culture of conflicts of interest has not only been allowed to exist, but in fact become a business model. It's a failure of regulatory oversight that's allowed this to fester, and we cannot allow it to continue.
She's disturbed by what she's seeing.
Auditors are no longer auditors. They've tried to be everything to everybody with a profoundly profit-driven culture, and they've lost what they had to sell, which was integrity, scepticism, and dedicated truth-telling in service of the markets. We need to recover that. That is the vital product for every Australian and for everyone who needs the markets to properly function.
Whistleblower Tony Watson describes his recovery as a journey.
One of the issues I faced getting back to work was just a reluctance to get on the train and travel to work. But eventually you get there, and that's what I did.
A decade after sounding the alarm as a corporate insider, he's hoping to get justice by taking his old firm and Lendlease to court, alleging breach of contract and a right to compensation under Australia's whistleblower laws.
I've travelled so far, euphemistically. I want people to see that my message isn't one of they crush you, they do, but my message is one of hope and coming back.